again, sorry, but we do have to get to the next thing, and I know I subjected all of you to Roseanne Barr and Nux Taku collaborating together on a podcast, and every single bit of that was as bad on your brain as it was on mine. But we gotta cover the next thing, and the next thing is Wizards of the Coast, actually. That is something that I did not want to have to say over on this channel, but that is 100% what happened. So we're going to talk about what's gone on with WotC recently, and before we do that, I want to go ahead and show you guys fan art. This is from Gideon Wells, and this is a submission for the fan art costume contest. The winner of the fan art costume contest will have their fan art put up on top of my beautiful pink fucking skin as an actual model. Popper says, oh boy. Gideon says, burn it. Gideon, you made it! Look, I've even got a slime Suris drinking bottle because, you know, drinking myself is somebody's fetish, not mine, but apparently it is this version of me's fetish. And baggy pants, you know what? I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. As always, thank you all for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, let's go ahead and get right into things, because holy shit. So what did Hasbro's sock puppet do right now? Yeah, let's talk about what happened with Hasbro's favorite fleshlight. So just so you guys know, let's go ahead and give you the TLDR real quick. The Magic the Gathering Arena team, for those who don't know what Magic the Gathering Arena is one of the 2 online clients for playing Magic the Gathering. Arena has access to Pioneer, Modern, and Alchemy, or Pioneer, Standard, and Alchemy, whereas every format under the sun except the Alchemy formats are available on Magic the Gathering Online. Magic the Gathering Online's been around for like 25 fucking years, and the client feels like it's a game that's been around that goddamn long. Magic the Gathering Arena is the more modern client that is able to run on smartphones, so there's a lot of players who play primarily on that. Okay, the Magic the Gathering Arena team has been trying to unionize, and as part of the unionization process, Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro technically, hired a union-busting firm to be their lawyer representative in this particular case, because you can either recognize a union immediately or you can wait out the terms for the union, and then you get to a point where an election happens where the company gets to decide who is eligible to vote in the election. It's a whole process. They're in the election process right now. So, during the election process, Wizards of the Coast provided to the NLRB, one of the people who help certify unions, provided the list of employees eligible to vote in the election to the NLRB, and the list of employees was their legal names and not their chosen names. Now, this may not seem like a big deal to some people. God damn it, why? One sec. All right, no. Actually, take me off your call list, and also maybe consider just several uses of a knife. Get creative. Okay, none of that shit. Anywho, let's go back to the actual video. So, Wizards of the Coast provided a list to the NLRB. The list contained the dead names of several trans employees on the Magic the Gathering Arena team. Then, after providing that list, and apologizing for providing that list to the NLRB, they provided the list again, completely identical and unchanged, to the NLRB, with all the dead names on it still. Asina says, editor, strike that? No, don't strike that. It is a robot who called me, and I am okay telling a robot to fucking kill themselves. I think that that is perfectly valid, and I do not believe that I am in the wrong. It is a clanker, and it deserves my disdain. That said, Wizards of the Coast provided that list again, after apologizing for providing that list and basically saying they wouldn't do it again, provided that list again with all the dead names on it as well. And so during the election process, there were several trans employees that had to get up and verify in front of their peers that the dead names were in fact theirs, to certify that they could in fact vote in the election. We're gonna have to talk about that real quick. So, the NLRB specifically said that they have worked with several companies before that have had to use chosen names instead of birth names. Wizards of the Coast is trying to hide behind this being a legal process, saying that They had to provide legal names because that is required by the NLRB, and the NLRB is saying, what the fuck are you talking about? We use chosen names all the time for this shit. You guys are lying. So, anyways, that's fun. Marco says, agree with the sentiment, but get creative. Give it a logic bomb. Everything I say is a lie. I am lying to you. Jesus Christ. Skid says, this doesn't even achieve anything. It's just violence for the sake of violence. Right. So, I came prepared for that statement. So, there are going to be people who say that this is not important. This is not something that matters. This is small. But I actually pulled a study that is a meta-analysis of most of the studies that we've had up till 2024 involving workplace and other harassment of trans people once they've been clocked or once they've been found out or outed or what have you. And I've actually got numbers to back up every goddamn thing I say here because I made this video already for the Magic the Gathering channel and I'm making it again here. So I've got all of my shit in order for this. But there's a special thing that's happening in this video because I get to talk about this dumb motherfucker during this. Anyways, so let's go ahead and look at some of the numbers. In one of the studies, 37 trans academic physicists, mostly from the United States, reported 49% of them reported exclusionary behavior, 35% of them reported an uncomfortable climate. US sample, the next one, 86 trans people for this study, 38% experienced slurs, 28% experienced microtransgressions, but that one was not specific to work, so we're not going to worry about that. And 51% experienced sexual harassment, not specific to work, but percentages were for all LGBT groups, not specifically transgender people. So a heightened rate of being sexually assaulted, and sexually harassed, not necessarily related to work. In STEM fields, about 20% of harassment happened to trans people in those fields. Looking at the next field, sample of 42 LGBTQ people, not really noticed what number was trans. People in the medical field, 12% of them experienced harassment at their medical center, which is a lower number than some of the other areas, but again, it's a medical center. So people at least know a little more about trans bodies there. Next study, U.S. sample of cardiology physicians. Didn't separate trans from LGBTQ, but in that point, 75% experienced negative experiences like gossip, rumors, and hostility in regards to their sexuality or gender. We have the National Transgender Discrimination Survey, where 50% had experienced harassment at work after being outed. 100,000 LGBTQ plus people from the European Union and neighboring countries. This was a huge study. A majority of trans people in every country queried reported being harassed in the past 12 months. Not specific to the workplace, but still harassed. Another study from James et al. 15% of trans people verbally harassed or physically attacked or sexually assaulted at work. 23% for other forms of harassment, like being told by their employer to present as the wrong gender or lose their job. Or having employees or coworkers share private information about their transgender status without any fucking consent. Boy, howdy. There's a reason that I'm stopping on that one, because that is exactly what happened over here. It's almost like we have studies that showed that this is happening more often than not, and that is a bad thing, because when people who are trans are outed, you do not know if the people around them in their workplace environment are bigoted or not, and by opening them up to that kind of discrimination, you are rolling the dice on their lives, their livelihood, their comfort, their everything. You don't need to do that. There's no reason to do that, but you are doing that. I said, love that, super love that. Right. So, a thing to consider as well. By and large, Wizards of the Coast has been very, very trans-affirming. By and large, they've been very LGBTQ-friendly. Every single one of the people who were surveyed during this by Kotaku said that they actually were hurt more by the whiplash than by the actual act. Wizards of the Coast dead naming them and doing it twice, doing it once and then doing it again after apologizing for doing it, would have been bad enough, and maybe could have been something that they would have just handled. But if it wasn't for the fact that they were in an environment that has been so affirming and so helpful and so careful with them this entire time, having it just ripped away from them randomly, it feels like a betrayal. Yeah, no, you got it right on the head there, Katrain. So, Now we are going to go to Chucklefuck McGee here, and we are going to listen to his perspective on this. Because I was looking around for videos on this so that I could get all the information I could about it, and in so doing, I came across this, and I thought this was going to be a fair and even-handed video about the events, but then I listened to the first 5 seconds of what happened here.
Of the Coast is in massive trouble. The modern audience that they worked so hard to get is turning on them and actually trying to destroy their company from the inside. This happens every single time with one of these organizations. You let the woke in, they transform it to what they're trying to do with things, they remove the whole reason for people to follow the company to begin with, and then they absolutely destroy it with their weird commie practices, which is what's going on right now.
Did you follow even one fucking word of that? Because I didn't, but let's try to break it down a little bit. So first, what does let the woke in mean? Does let the woke in mean you hired trans people? Hired gay people? Does it mean that you brought their ideology into the company policy? Like, let the woke in is doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of trying to explain what happened here. I can't follow this because there is no information given there. Next, weird commie practices. I'm just curious, which practices have happened here that reek of communism? Just communism. A classless, stateless, moneyless society. What part of what trans people have done to Wizards of the Coast reeks of communism? Because I don't think you're going to be able to find it. Because it's not fucking there.
Now, this is getting really, really wild, and we're going to get into this news in just a moment. So please hit the like and subscribe button. Join us here as we talk about...
Or, you know, hit the like and subscribe button over here and don't let this weird fucking bigoted person get your view. I don't know.
All things science fiction and fantasy. I am the purveyor of Fandom Pulse here, guys. This is...
Fandom Pulse. For some reason, that sounds familiar. Hold on. Fandom Pulse. No, I'm not giving you my email. John Sable Freelance, the most underrated comic of the 90s, finally gets its due before you miss the finale. Widow's Bay. DC signs Dennis Camp exclusive deal. Missed again after someone shot at... last month he posted miss again after someone shot at Trump. And it's a free country. Shut the fuck up. Anna Taylor is playing Lord of the Rings character Tolkien never created. Why does that matter either? Okay, nope, it's... Women does thing in fantasy. Person does not like Trump. All right, I know kind of what I'm dealing with now, and I'm not super thrilled about any of it. Said, look, please let me be the next quartering or heel versus babyface. I'm saying all the same words they do. Why isn't it working?
This is my Substack where I write a bunch of articles a day, and I've been pushing this pretty hard lately because YouTube's a complete disaster. I may never find you again after this video, and I can't just talk about things that are interesting in the industry without it.
You're pushing multiple articles per day. There's 2 ways you do that. One way is by not giving a shit about your actual work and pushing as many out as you possibly can without verifying everything you're doing. The other way is AI. I don't have evidence for one or the other.
Being something viral. I actually skipped over a big story that actually was in tabletop games. Paizo, which is a Wizards of the Coast competitor, is laying off a bunch of people after they went hard on identity politics. Cool Mini or not is going crazy. They just bought an NFT company. All these things are on here on Fandom Pulse that you might not see here. And so sign up, fandompulse.com. It's in the description below.
Okay, can we skip your self-advert?
Has so much content, and this way it gets us out of the leak alone, so I appreciate you being here. Let's get into this Wizards of the Coast news. As you can see, I've got the article right here. They're fighting their own employees, and it created the conditions that made this happen. So if you don't know, Wizards of the Coast runs Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. It's probably actually why you're here. And they have...
Sean says, also, he's lying about Paizo. The real reason is because Diamond Publishing collapsed. So it wasn't because of the Wokies? Wow, color me fucking shocked.
Made both properties extremely woke over the last few years. They are heading actually towards a union election it did not want. In a culture war it manufactured over a workforce it spent years in reshaping into its own ideological image.
What? Okay, so let's go over a couple of those words because they were all very stupid. Let's go over a couple of them, though. First of all, a union that Wizards doesn't want. Of course, Wizards of the Coast, the corporation, does not want a union. A union advocates for the rights of workers as opposed to the rights of the corporation itself. No corporation wants a union. That's why unions are good, actually, you dumbass. Because unions are there to help workers advocate for themselves and be able to do things like go on strike and negotiate better wages and negotiate better healthcare and negotiate better hours. Unions are a good thing. Corporations are not your friend. So you use a union so that you can fight a corporation when you need to. Unions are not a bad thing. So, okay. Secondly, Wizards of the Coast tried shaping things into a different ideology. My guy, they just hired people who weren't as bigoted as before. Like, you hired gay and trans people. Like, is that really what the problem is? You hired gay and trans people? Like, that's the thing that you're really upset about? That's your holdup? Okay, sure, but it doesn't make any goddamn sense. Secondly, a culture war they manufactured. My fucking God, you are so historically inept. The entire culture war around games begins with fucking Gamergate, my guy. Gamergate was pushed by right-wingers, not by fucking left-wingers, because left-wingers didn't give two flying fucks who Zoe Quinn slept with. And I wouldn't even know that story if it weren't for right-wingers pushing it and then trying to use it as a way to push people into the alt-right. You know, that thing that happened. You goddamn idiot. The culture war thing is primarily pushed by the right wing. But okay, we'll just ignore all of history in order to get to this position. And WotC fighting its own workers, yeah, that's what a union is. There's always going to be tension between an employer and the employees. That tension is called class struggle because the employer is likely on a different rung of the class hierarchy and the workers are likely on a lower rung of the class hierarchy. So the fact that corporations are not your friend, but you do rely on them for income means that you have this cool thing called class struggle where you will be in an antagonistic relationship with each other while also mutually needing each other. This is very basic shit, but okay.
The results of the Magic the Gathering's Arena Union vote will be announced on June 23rd, and the chaos leading up to it is really, really fun to watch. It is good for popcorn. Now, the immediate controversy...
Why is it good for popcorn? Okay, so here's another thing that confuses me. Why do people bask in cruelty? Why is cruelty good? Please make the point for me. Please make the case for me as to why cruelty is something that we should be okay with.
Is pretty straightforward. When Arena employees filed for a union election, the National Labor Relations Board, Wizards of the Coast submitted a required list of eligible voters using legal names. That list was then posted internally where the company employees could see it. Several transgender employees were outed to their coworkers by their dead names appearing in public lists. Yes, this is...
Why are you laughing about that? Why is that funny? Why is it funny to you that people who did not want that information brought out had to get traumatized by having that information brought out? Why is that something that you take joy in? Please take a minute to self-reflect on that. Why do I, a shitty individual, take joy in the suffering of others? Why do I minimize the suffering of others? Why is that a thing that I do? Why won't my parents talk to me anymore?
This is real. They were mad because, Billy wants to be called Ellen now, and it said Billy because it's his legal name. Unbelievable. Wizards of the Coast apologized.
How is that unbelievable? Do you know what a nickname is? Because a trans person's chosen name is like a nickname, but it actually carries a lot more weight. So, how's that unbelievable? Do you know any trans people? Have you talked to any of them? Have you gotten the perspective from anybody who might be a victim here? Or are you just, again, basking in cruelty for cruelty's sake? What is the benefit here?
Apologized, pulled the list, sent individual emails instead. Then during the in-person voting session, the same legal name list was used again, meaning the transgender employees had to state their legal names aloud in front of coworkers. And oh my gosh.
Why is that something that's funny? Please explain the joke to me. Why is it funny that a group of trans people who did not want to be outed to their other employees, to their other friends and coworkers, Why is it funny that those people had to have their information forced out there without their consent? Why is that funny when we have actual data that suggests that the rate of violence, harassment, and sexual abuse towards trans people skyrockets after the point where they are outed in such a way? Why is that okay? Please explain to me in human words why sexual harassment and an increase of numbers of rape is okay. Because I have the numbers that show that that is what happens in a situation like this. And you are finding it funny because instead of doing any actual research into what you are talking about, you are simply being the exact example of what a reactionary is. You are reacting to a thing. You are not doing any research. You are not doing your due diligence. You are not learning anything. You are simply knee-jerking and laughing. But again, we have evidence to show what happens in this situation. An increase in being called slurs, an increase in being made fun of, an increase in cruelty, an increase in sexual harassment, an increase in sexual violence, rape, an increase in a bunch of things that we should not be celebrating. But you're celebrating it. Why do you celebrate rape? That's really weird, my guy. Please explain to me why you do that. Now, on my Magic the Gathering channel, I talked about this, and I was a lot more light-handed with this. I said things like, I can understand if you might not like trans people, but I also need you to understand that that doesn't matter. It doesn't give you a reason to be cruel for them. Over here on this channel, where I don't have to pull my punches as much, I'm just going to say, yeah, you're a goddamn fucking scumbag. Go reevaluate your life, or do other things with it. Get creative. Anyway, let's go ahead and continue your weird video.
Stating your name. Oh, no. These people are so absurd.
Right, because you refused to do any research into why stating their legal name in this situation was something that they did not want to do. You refused to educate yourself in any way, shape, or form. And then you basked in that ignorance. That makes you an idiot. The actual word to describe who you are in relation to this is moron. There is ignorance, where somebody simply does not know something, and then there is the scientific classification of moronicus dipshiticus, where you have the internet at your fingertips, and you could have looked up the exact same studies as I did, because it took me 10 minutes, and then I read through the conclusion, and read through the methodology as quick as I could, and realized, oh, right, weird. Looks like the studies actually show that data's on my side. Strange that the data shows that being on the side of not being cruel is good. But also, remember earlier when I said the only way you could possibly write multiple articles per day and get them on your Substack is by not researching fucking any of it or using AI? I think I figured out which one I lean on. I think it's 100% just not doing research. Because if you did research into this, you would know why this is actually a bigger deal than what you're making it out to be as. I did that research. I did my due diligence because I've made this video twice now.
And the NLRB observer, it cast their votes. The NLRB confirmed to the CWA, the union seeking to represent the arena workers, that it does not require legal names and has used preferred names in the past when employers provided them. Wizards of the Coast chose not to. The framing that Kotaku gave on this when they reported, of course, it came from Kotaku.
So, fun fact. One of the end results of Gamergate was the creation of a Reddit thread, or Reddit subreddit, called Kotaku in Action. Just like how the Magic the Gathering area also got split up into r/Magic the Gathering and r/Free Magic. Free Magic being the my free speech right-wing Magic the Gathering crowd. Probably the same shit that this guy is into. So when you do that, when you say shit that I expect on those subreddits, I have a very hard time taking you seriously anymore. Like, yeah, Kotaku tends to have a spin that, while not necessarily left-wing, is definitely more favorable to human fucking decency. Weird.
Was that they dead named its trans employees. It carries a
that's what happened.
Heavy implication that the company acted out of malice towards a group, which we know it historically supported. The employee...
Right, that's actually talked about in the Kotaku article. If you read the article, actually, the specific thing that was said by the employees that were interviewed by Kotaku is that Wizards of the Coast has been so supportive of them up to that point, it felt like a betrayal and a backlash to have those same employees be treated very differently by the company in this situation. There's been narratives about the fact that the reason Wizards was operating this way is because they don't want there to be a union, so they are engaging in performative cruelty against the union. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I don't think there's a lot of evidence for that. The biggest thing here for me is the fact that Wizards of the Coast provided the legal names that were not supposed to be there in this particular scenario, were not necessary to be there in this scenario, and in so doing, hurt a bunch of their trans employees, apologized to those trans employees, and then proceeded to do it again. That's the part that is whiplashy. That's the part that is confusing. That's the part that is hurtful.
Is themselves pushed back actually on the Kotaku framing. One affected worker told Kotaku, "I don't want to paint them as anti-trans. That hasn't been my experience. I've loved working here so much because of how I supported as a trans person every day. The actions are jarring to me because they're so at odds with the kindness." Now again,
so you did read the article. So you made that statement and then contradicted it by reading the article. Okay.
This is where these people are so crazy. Look, Ellen Page, Elliot Page, your name's Ellen. Everybody.
No, not anymore. By the way, I'm just curious. Hold on real quick. Dumbass McGee, who gets to determine their name? Because last I checked, last I assumed, if there is anybody that gets to decide their name, it is the person to whom the name belongs. Obviously, we are given a name as a placeholder by our parents, and many of us, most of us, tend to keep that name for the entirety of our lives as we identify with it. But if you don't identify with that name anymore, there's nothing wrong with changing it. Would you like evidence of this? Marriage exists. You're already okay with people changing their names. You're already okay with the side effect of somebody's name not being the same as it was at birth as it is today. You're already okay and completely normalized to that idea. You're just mad that somebody did it, of their own volition, and did it because of a reason you didn't like. But you're already okay with name changes because you're likely okay with marriage. And marriage usually comes with fucking name changes. God, these people are weird.
You know she was Ellen. You were legally listed on your W-2 as Ellen. You change your name to Elliot, take some hormone blockers or whatever.
Boy, howdy, did you just say that Elliot Page has a fucking W-2? You're really an idiot. You don't know anything about the industry you're talking about. Elliot doesn't get a W-2. You get a W-2 for salaried or hourly work. You don't get a W-2 for commissions or freelance or work that requires an agent. All of that usually is in 1099 miscellaneous or otherwise. That's a different tax filing entirely. But okay. Also, what happens when somebody legally changes their name? Do you still get up in arms about that? Really? Because that would also be very stupid.
Everybody to call you Elliot from there on out. That's gaslighting. And then
how is it gaslighting? How's it gaslight? Hold on. No, make that one fucking make sense to me. The definition of gaslighting is trying to convince somebody that they are crazy because the reality that they experience is not the reality that actually is happening. That's what gaslighting is. It's not gaslighting for me to say, hey, I prefer to be called this. That's not gaslighting at all. There's no world in which that's gaslighting. I'm not trying to make you crazy. I am not trying to lie to you. I am trying to tell you to be fucking respectful. That's not gaslighting, you goddamn idiot.
Oh, this was an affront to me. It's really ridiculous how these people are so narcissistic. And that's what it is. It's pure narcissism, right? And this is exactly what
How is it narcissism to just want basic human respect? How is that narcissism? That doesn't make any sense to me. Please make it make sense to me when I tell you, hey, I don't like you calling me that. Could you please call me this instead? How is that narcissistic as opposed to just, I don't know, having decent fucking self-respect? That's not narcissism. You don't know what narcissism is. You don't know what tax filing people have that have a fucking SAG-AFTRA contract. You don't know what gaslighting is. You don't even know why dead naming matters. You refuse to do any research on any of it. Holy fucking shit. Is there anything you can speak on with any measure of expertise? Is there anything you can speak on at all where you actually can come to me honestly and say that you did even an ounce of research? As opposed to just reading an article and reacting to it like you're the fucking quartering. Because I don't think you can. I don't think you will. Jesus Christ. I can't. I'm halfway through your video, and you have not given me an incentive to complete it. I'm gonna try.
The coast kind of deserves. Another employee who goes by Kaylee Rose, who sounds like a dude. I've always...
How? It's a written fucking article. It's a written article. How does the name Kaylee Rose sound like a dude in a written fucking article? How? No, fucking explain that one to me too. How? How is that the case? My God, you are so unbelievably fucking stupid. I don't even care that any of this is offensive. The thing that's offensive to me is not you hurting trans people. If I'm being honest, you were going to do that because it was offensive in the first place. So I give no shits about that. No. The thing that offends me most is that I have to live on a planet where I share soil with somebody who speaks so confidently into the aether without actually doing even an ounce of research into the thing they're talking about. Why is it that I have to live on a planet where your feet touch the same places my feet might one day touch? I find that repugnant in a way that I can't even explain. Holy fucking shit. Nope. We're done. We're done. I have not been given any incentive to finish your video. I have not. I can't bring myself to. Because to finish your video is to make even the mildest assumption that there is a chance that somewhere in that incessant stream of thought, there is something worth evaluating. But I have failed to find it in the first half, and I am fairly certain I won't find it in the second one. Please, an ounce of research. I'm begging you. Something. Anything. Anything to make me think that you actually care about your work and you care about human beings, as opposed to just caring about scraping out what money you can. Anything at all. I fucking beg. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagitta, you know I'm not saying that last part, Sylvie Snow, Valis of Seraph, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.